begin with a prayer. Lord, fill me with your love and your wisdom. Let it flow through me. And as we transit this life, let our focus be on you. And give us the hope and the love and the joy of your resurrection. Amen. Please be seated. So spring is happening. Tomorrow's supposed to be 70s, right? Yeah. So spring in some places is overnight, like the desert blooms, like poor Lake Elsinore being trashed with all the, beautiful poppies. In the mountains it's a little more slow. My daffodils are this big, and I don't see quite any here quite yet. So some transitions are quite quickly. Some are a little more slowly. And I like that passage from Isaiah that says, God creates paths in mighty water. A transition is a path. And in architecture, transitional paths are going from one place to another place. They can be hallways, they can be corridors, they can be, stairwells, they can be paths across, a little compound. Students in college, if you put out sidewalks, they won't take those. They'll take the quicket path of resistance, So these are transitional spaces. And a lot of times the transitional spaces, if an architect's good enough, they'll figure them out. They'll design around what people have already created. But these are axes sometimes where there's focal points along them. They're not just getting from one place to another, but they're design elements. So let's take a look at this space here. You're sitting in your pew. You're going to come up for communion. The aisle is your transitional space. And what's the focus of that transitional space? The altar and the cross. Right? So you have a perfect example of a transitional space that you're going to be participating in. And it's not just spaces, just physical spaces, but spaces in our lives. So Lucy's not here today, but one really good transition in our lives is what? The first steps we take. And unless you've had knee surgery like I do and have to relearn it, most of us don't remember how hard it was to learn to walk. I'm sure we just take it for granted these days, but we do. And then the second one is going to school, right? Transitioning to go to school. How many people remember their first day of school? Yeah, so quite a few people, right? So that's a transition. And then getting out of school and going into the real world, right? That was for me a real blow, okay? All of a sudden there's bills, there's this, there's that. Yeah, it wasn't fun. Then we have marriages, going single to family, moves, jobs. And then when you get established, you get the life figured out, then you have to start, what? Simplifying life. You start having too much that you have to take care of. So Lent, where we're in Lent, is basically a transition too. It's a transition from the glorious light of Epiphany to Easter. And the gospel here is part of that path that Jesus is taking to his resurrection. Right now he's in Bethany. And Bethany is 1.5 miles to the east of Jerusalem. So it's basically where the Mount of Olives is, okay? And the Mount of Olives, actually, if you've done any research, it's where they bury their dead because they think that Christ is going to come through that golden gate that the Muslims have all walled up to back into Jerusalem. But that's where Bethany is, and he's at this story is in all 4 Gospels. It's a little different in all 4 Gospels, so I'm not going to go into the differences. I'm just going to focus on John's version, okay? And in John's version, he's at Lazarus, Mary, and Martha's house. So we got Lazarus. Everybody remembers Lazarus, raised from the dead after 4 days. We got Martha. Now she's serving, and she's not complaining this time. Remember last time she was complaining? Yeah. And now we got Mary, and Mary now is still at his feet, not listening, but pouring some ointment over it. Okay, so just to give you kind of an illustration of the ointment. This is rose oil. Okay? This little teeny tiny bottle is about $200. Yeah. It's $200 because about 1,000 rose petals makes a drop of this oil. Something like that. I got it on sale, so that on Valentine's Day. That's my Valentine's Day present. So, but this is she was using nard oil. Now nard, and I asked Ann if she had any spikenard oil, and she said no, she did not. But spikenard oil is about, I would say, $163 for this much. Okay, and spikenard, just to give you a little history here, it is actually found in the higher regions of Nepal, in the mountains. It takes about 20-30 days for them to harvest the roots, and they put one root back in the ground so they can harvest it again, and then they take all the other roots and they put it in a big pot and boil it out and get the oil. And so even back in Mary's day, it had to come all the way from Nepal, because I don't know of any other place that this oil is actually grown, or the spikenard is actually grown. And so, yeah, a pound of it, probably about this much of it, would have cost an awful lot of money. So that, I just wanted to give you that illustration of what she was doing. Is a very expensive kind of gift. Now, why? Why was she doing this? Well, first of all, the story kind of foreshadows, it's a kind of example for Jesus to foreshadow what was going to be coming up in the next 6 days. But I think for some reason, somehow, maybe Jesus already kind of communicated that to Mary. Maybe she realized that the next 6 days weren't going to be very easy. Maybe it wasn't going to end triumphantly, like maybe some of the other disciples thought it would be. You know, and at this point, she didn't understand. She hadn't seen the resurrection. She hadn't seen Christ, you know, in his heavenly body. But she probably had a feeling that something was up. And so this was her gift to Jesus. So pause for a moment. And I think when we say hello, it's a joyful thing. When we say goodbye, we always have that hope we're going to see that person again, you know? We always, you know, my mom, she always says, well, goodbye for now. You know, there's that hope that we will see that person soon. And I know when I left grad school, I knew I wasn't going to see many of my friends again. So my term of knowledge was, have a nice life, you know? Just have a nice, probably won't see you again, so have a nice life. But, you know, we all try to kind of pull something out of this. And Jesus, I think, really did understand what exactly was going to go happen, how it was going to go down. He understood he had to go through the passion and the crucifixion. He understood he had to transit that very difficult path. And where was his focus? Like the aisle. His focus was on God. It was on God to help him through that difficult passage in his life, to get from his human to his heavenly body, from a transitory life to eternal life. And I think in us, we have a lot of transitions in our own life. You know, a lot of hard transitioning as we go from different stages and different places. And our focus, too, needs to be on God. Because death isn't the final goodbye. That is a passage. We don't really quite understand what this resurrection, because we're still here in our human forms. But that is what this passage is preparing everybody for. To prepare for Palm Sunday, coming in on the donkey, the passion, the crucifixion, and then the joy of the resurrection. Yeah. So when you come down this aisle, when you leave the space, your personal space of your seats, and you come down the aisle for communion, which is our vow with God that he loves us, that he gave Christ on the cross for us. Let's focus on the cross. And let's thank God for his love.